Hey, what's going on, everyone? Henry Kaminski here with another Brand Doctor podcast episode for you guys. Today, I have an amazing guest who I linked up with on LinkedIn just a couple of weeks ago and invited him on to the podcast because I checked out his summary and his bio and his LinkedIn page, and it was very, very impressive. And then it sort of guided me over to his website, and I was even more impressed. So I want to introduce all of you guys to my man, Jay Jackson, the Transformation Architect. What's going on, Jay?
What's going on, Henry, man? How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you taking time out of the day to come on and speak to my audience and speak to me about, your expertise and your brand. And so I'm going to shut up. I want you to introduce yourself to the audience, and we want to know how you created the Transformation Architect. What happened in your life that sparked this brand of yours?
Absolutely. I am a military veteran of the United States Air Force, 15 years.
Thank you for your service.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's an honor. Nothing has really changed other than my uniform. But I tell people, oftentimes life throws you a curveball, and that's how I got started. So the Department of Defense, the DoD, was doing a lot of downsizing like many corporations do. They were starting a downsizing process in about December of 2013 with the drawdown from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And anytime any corporation starts to make different, downsizes and crunching the numbers, some great people have to transition into, their second career or third career. And, initially I said, unfortunately, I was one of those individuals. But to be honest with you, I now say, fortunately, I was, because now in Life 2.0, I really have the ability to become my greatest version, live to my highest potential without any restrictions. But it all started because that entire process for me was very, very difficult. My goal, my plan, my dream, my vision was to serve in the military at the highest rank of enlisted leadership for 28, 30 years, retire, move into civil service, probably do that for another, maybe 20 years. And they were probably going to have to tell me, you need to go home, old man, because we don't want you around anymore. That's how much I loved what I did. So when the downsizing came and I found out my name was one of the names on the list, it was hard for me. I dealt with some stress, some frustration, even a major bout of depression. And, I have since then, gotten some therapy and things like that, and being diagnosed with PTSD and major depressive disorder. I think it's a combination of childhood experiences, my time in Baghdad, Iraq, and then, of course, this major challenge, going through the transition period from active duty to what I call Life 2.0. And so when I first got out, Henry, I'll be honest, I had no idea exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go back to corporate America. I was really exhausted with the idea of having someone else or some type of institution control the direction of my life. And so I felt like a free bird, so to speak. I was out of the cage, and it was now my opportunity to say, okay, I know that anything is possible for me. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes for me to, chart my own course, be the captain of my fate, the master of my soul type scenario. And so in the process, I got out, went to a conference, or it's called the Neighborhood Awards, that is hosted by Steve Harvey in the Atlanta area the summer before I got ready to transition from active duty. And a friend and I, we just went to that conference so that we could hear Steve tell some jokes. And of course, Steve told some amazing jokes. We laughed. We had a great time. Well, as you know, when you go to conferences, they capture your contact information. One of mine was my email address. And so a few months later, after I had transitioned out of the military, I get this email from Steve Harvey that says, you want to know what it takes to be successful, you need to come to my conference. So of course, I knew what it meant to be successful in the military, but now I need to know what the heck does it mean to be successful as a civilian, because this is an entirely new world for me. And so, of course, I made the investment, got a VIP ticket thinking I was going to be close to Steve or at least make contact. That didn't happen. But I reserved my hotel, booked a flight, brother, And the difficult part about that whole entire process was during this period, there was a major snowstorm in the southeast region of the country. And, a lot of people had, tragedy in that whole entire storm. But for me, I was sitting on the flight, getting ready to depart, and they canceled my flight. And I had a good friend of mine who was in the military with me on board. And so, of course, they had us depart the flight. And I got off first. He met me at the door and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "I guess that means we're driving." And I said, absolutely, because he understood the importance I put on being in that space. And so we went to get our bags, went to the rental car counter. We took off. It was a great drive until about the North Carolina, Virginia area. We started, couldn't see 2 feet in front of us. You could hear ice crunching underneath the tires of the vehicle. We slowed down to maybe 40, 45 minutes or 40 to 50 miles per hour as we were driving. But we made it an hour before the conference started. Took a shower, made it to my seat, and I promise you it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I had the opportunity to hear some of the industry giants, Lisa Nichols, Patrice Washington, of course, the General Steve Harvey himself. Most importantly, my now mentor and business coach, a guy by the name of Paul Carrick Brunson. Paul was, it was a perfect scenario. He told a story about how he had worked for 2 billionaires, one being Oprah Winfrey and another gentleman by the name of Enver Yücel, a Turkish billionaire. And so he was just sharing what it took from his experience and perspective, what it meant to be successful. And, he made different comments about find someone who's doing what you love to do and model their behavior because success leaves clues. And so after listening to all of these experts in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? I've got it. The military had given me everything that these people are talking about, but there was one major piece that I was missing. And it's something Paul kept saying, and that is relationships are key. And so right then and there, I realized I'm screwed. I don't know anybody. So how am I supposed to put all of this together? And so the Transformation Architect was born from a place where I knew that I needed a plan, a strategy, or a blueprint to get me from where I was to where I wanted to be. And so because I didn't really have any role models, an uncle, a dad, or anyone that I can really turn to, what I have since then is I found several mentors, whether virtually or in person, who I can then, tap into, understand their core values, help me understand what mindset that I need to have and how to really approach my day-to-day. And so since then, I have been documenting my journey. Every project that I've worked on, I maintain a pretty solid filing system, and I'm basically documenting it with videos, with photos, the processes and systems that I put together, designing, as an architect does, a blueprint. And this blueprint I now take and say, okay, clients, friends, family, here's what I've learned over the past few years. I now want to take my military education and experience, leverage it as a leader and trainer, and then take that and show people how they themselves can get from where they are to where they want to be, regardless of what their scenario might be. Again, I talked about stress, depression, and frustration for myself, and I know a lot of people struggle with that. It could be anxiety. It can be the termination of a job. It could be a divorce. It could be, hey, I just want to start a business, or I want to take my team and strengthen our bond so that we can increase profits in our business. And so I basically take the blueprints that I've developed from my military experience and what I've done the past 3 years, and I offer it to people as a service. And we've had phenomenal outcomes, traveling to speak across the country. I've written 2 books, virtual webinars and things of that nature. I'm actually working on a major project right now. Matter of fact, this will be the first time I'm going to share this with the world. Excuse me. So on March 1st, I'm getting ready to launch a teleconference with multiple industry experts, primarily in 4 cities, because this teleconference is going to lead to a 4-city tour, Chicago, DC, Atlanta, and Dallas, where I have taken the relationships that I've built over the past 3 years and leveraged them to get some pretty solid influencers to come on board with this project with me so that we can truly impact lives and businesses. my current tribe and team, we are on a mission to transform 5 million lives and businesses by 2023. And we're going to do that through tours and webinars and podcasts and some documentary films and books, you name it. We're on a mission, brother. And I'm happy to be a part of it with you now, Henry.
Ooh, that's awesome. Listen, there's one city that I didn't hear.
Okay, talk to me. Where are we at?
And that's New York City, my man.
New York City. All right. So,
if you need somebody to rep, you got to let me know.
Okay. So New York City. Look, I'll be honest with you. That New York wasn't an option simply because I didn't have any relationships in the New York area. So now Henry says I've got him in the New York area. I'll say this. So the last stop is Dallas, and it is August 4th. So that gives us still another 4 months in 2018 to see if we can try to pull it off. If not, I tell you, I definitely plan to double the cities in 2019. So we're going to be 8 cities in 2019. So if we can't make it happen this year, Henry, we'll definitely add New York to the list in 2019.
I love it, man. I love it. Listen, I love what you're dropping, man. I feel like we're cut from the same cloth. There was a lot of trials and tribulations that I went through as an entrepreneur myself and as an individual as myself. And like, I can't explain how much your story is resonating with me. I want to take it back though, because you said something way in the beginning that kind of piqued my intrigue. And it was when you set out to be the highest ranking officer in the military, like that was your goal. Where did that come from? Like, I want to go back and I want you to take me back to like the beginning.
Okay. So I'll tell you, man.
Where did that drive come from?
It really started in my childhood. So I had a pretty rough childhood, domestic violence where my stepdad was pretty verbally and physically abusive towards my mom and sister and I. And I'll tell you, when I got in, and it lasted for about 7 years until I turned about age 16. When I turned age 16, that's when I had enough. And I basically grabbed his pistol and his weapon and basically confronted him and told him that either he's going to leave or one of us is going to die tonight. Fortunately, he left. And, since then we have moved forward, we've healed. And one of the major things that he would always say is that I would never be anything. And so, I understand that a lot of people hear negative things and experience negative things. And unfortunately, some people kind of compartmentalize that and it drives them into a small corner and they never really recover. And I'll just say, hey, I'm fortunate to where along my journey, I've had some spiritual teachings that have, kind of been embedded inside of me to kind of help me stay strong. And joining the military was the best decision that I ever made because it now put me in an environment that was conducive for achievement, teamwork, discipline, respect, honor. And so once I joined the military, of course, I had to get rid of some of my own negative habits and behaviors as I transitioned into the military. But it wasn't until I experienced a similar comment that my stepfather had made. I actually experienced a similar comment from a supervisor. So I was getting ready. There was a point in time, I think it was about maybe 2003 or 2004, where the Air Force, as many corporations do, they had overages in my original career field. And my original career field was security forces, which was an MP. And there was an overage in that career field, and they gave us a window that basically said, hey, you have the opportunity to retrain into a new career field. Here's your window. And I went out and I applied. I applied primarily to become an air traffic controller, which is what I finished up my career in the Air Force in, which the Air Force has a very high attrition rate. And so everyone knew it. I understood that, but hey, I'm going to give it a shot. Maybe I'm a bit naive to believe that I can achieve anything. So, hey, I'm going to go for it. But when I went into this supervisor, because I needed his signature on the paperwork, he signed it. But the comment that he made was, you'll be back. which means when you wash out of your new career field, which for me was air traffic control, they automatically put you back into your old career field. And so when he made that comment of "you'll be back," it really triggered something inside of me that brought back a memory from my childhood. And I basically said, "You're right, I'm going to prove it to you." And so the entire time while I was in my retraining course down in Keachler, Mississippi for air traffic control, I basically went into straight obsession beast mode. Even though I would go to class every single day, I would come home in the afternoon and study for an additional 2 hours. I would also study on the weekends because I refused to go back. I refused to allow him to win. Fortunately, with all of the hard work that I put in, I actually became a distinguished graduate for that particular course. And I've gotten a lot better with my pettiness, Henry, but I'll tell you, when I graduated and got my certificate, I made a copy of it and mailed it to him. Just to basically show you'll never tell me what I cannot do. And so ever since that moment, it just kind of clicked something in me, and it's something that I've held on to. I realized that, hey, if I put my mind to it, anytime I studied for promotion, if I put a plan together, a strategy in terms of when I'm going to study, how many days a week, how many hours, et cetera, highlighting things and really putting a blueprint. It started really a long time ago, this process of architecting, your success. I really start putting strategies together early on in my career. And every single time I did that and I committed myself to studying, I've succeeded. It has proven to work for me my entire life. Each time I did it, I know it works. And so that's why now I walk into every scenario with enough confidence to be able to say, hey, it might not work each time. The plan might not go exactly how we want the plan to go. But if you at least put a plan together, surround yourself with the right people, and you execute. And I think that's a major piece that a lot of people lose sight of. We all have great ideas, but if you don't have the proper mindset, the appropriate team, and the ability to execute, your idea is just that. It's an idea. So each time I've done it, brother, it has worked for me, and I'm really excited about where things, are currently and what the future holds.
That's phenomenal. So I want to go deep. I want to dig into these two. I'm going to actually share screen here for a second, because what we do with this podcast, we actually produce it for YouTube as well.
Awesome.
So I'm going to share screen, and I just want everybody to take a peek at the MrJJackson.com website. All right. And I want you guys to take a quick peek. And sorry for you guys that are listening to this via podcast. And if you want to see this, just shoot over to my YouTube channel and look for the episode. You'll find it. Look at the two paragraphs that he's got going on right here. It says, stop trying to force others to raise their game. Continue raising your standards. Stay focused on your vision. You keep moving forward. No person is tied to your destiny. And so I want to break that down real quick, kind of share a quick little story with you. So, when I'm building my brand, and as I continue to build my brand, a lot of the people that are close to me see things that I don't, right? And it was actually my wife that brought this up to me, and she said, Henry, you have to not sort of get so upset when you see people not working to their full potential, because maybe they just don't want to. And that was a tough ball to swallow. That was a tough thing to swallow for me, because, and I talked about this movie 100 times already in the past, but in The Bronx Tale, the big punchline was, the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And that just stuck with me since I was 15 years old, since the first time I ever saw that movie. And that triggered me to always try to just do the best I could in everything that I set out to do. And again, I may not be the winner all the time, but just get out there and just use your talents to impact, use your talents to do good, use your talents to make a difference, right? And when I see other people with great talent that are just sitting on it, it drives me insane. But this here is speaking to me so much, this headline, because it says, listen, don't worry about them. like in a good way. Focus on yourself, raise the bar, raise your own bar. And guess what that will do? That will indirectly raise other people's bars, because they may not say it to you verbally or show it to you physically. But if you create an example, that changes the game.
Yep.
And so I love that. And then the next step, the next sort of big headline he has here is, you'll improve your results when you improve the level of your standards and expectations. And man, that to me rings home, because I've been to many Tony Robbins conferences. I got to meet him last year through a mutual friend. And man, when I tell you, that guy is such an influence, and one of his big things is raise your standard. Mm-hmm. The only difference between you and the guy standing next to you is the level of standard that they have. And so I want you to sort of unpack this, because there's a reason why this is above the fold on your website on prime real estate. And so I want you to unpack that a little bit, because I know I want to get your perspective.
Okay. So I'll break it. I'll do two parts. So the first part, in terms of, staying focused on your vision, stay focused on your goals, and no one person is tied to your destiny. It just comes from an experience that I had where I got myself into, and I made this mistake twice. And like they say, first time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. I got into two separate business ventures with two separate individuals. And shortly after entering to those business partnerships, I immediately realized that we had maybe different values, different motivators, and just we didn't operate at the same level of performance. And so that basically drove a wedge. It created some friction that drove a wedge in between us. And so what I had to do, in whether it's through counseling, mentorship, I really started to ask the question of, is there something wrong with me, or is there something wrong with them? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them or you. I've learned that there are three types of people in the world, Henry. One category of people are just, they're okay with living and being below average. They're okay with living in mediocrity, and that's okay. It doesn't make them right, doesn't make them wrong. It's just, that's the standard of life that they choose to have. Then you've got people who are just average. They're okay with, maybe an Applebee's, type meal. And again, that's okay with those individuals as well. But then you've got people, and I like to consider myself in this category, who want to have the greatest impact on the world. We need to have the best talent around us. We need to have as many resources as we could possibly have, so that we can make the greatest impact, whether it's, feeding people in third and fourth world countries, or helping out with the education system here and abroad. And those are people who I really call superstars. These are the people who are really, walking in their purpose. They're really showing up and being the light for other people. And they're actually lighting a path for those who might be in that mediocrity, range, or even the average range. And they just need a glimpse. Sometimes some of us, in our responsibilities with our skills, gifts, and talents, it's our responsibility to be a light for someone else and light the path so that they can see what's possible for them. And so when those business partnerships fell apart, I had to really, again, get some mentorship and some guidance that has really helped me understand that there is a season for everyone in your life. Hopefully, Henry and I, we can build on this relationship and actually execute a project together in the New York area. If we aren't, I don't believe it would be because of negative reasons. It's just, hey, we were supposed to do this podcast, and that was supposed to be our only connection, on our journeys. Maybe we'll meet up again 5 years from now. But at the end of the day, no one person is tied to your destiny, whether it's an ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, a family member, whomever it is, or a business relationship. When their responsibility in your journey is over, be okay with terminating that relationship and moving forward, because no one person is tied to your destiny. So that's where that particular quote comes from. The other quote comes from a place where before I could even recognize the gifts and talents that I have, there were people who saw things in me that I didn't even see in myself.
I've been there.
Yeah. And so
I had those people in my life too.
Yeah. And so I would, quote unquote, settle for certain relationships. I would settle because being around certain people made me feel comfortable, whether I was the smartest person in the room, the best looking guy in the group, the best dressed, whatever the case might be. I felt really comfortable because I could notice that there was a difference, but no one else challenged me. And so I wasn't able to get the results that I wanted, because the iron in the room wasn't sharp enough to sharpen me and help me become sharper, make me become better. And so when I wasn't experiencing the results that I needed, again, a huge Tony Robbins fan, like you, it kept resonating with me. Tony, raise your standards. Whatever it is that you want, raise your standards, raise your expectations, raise what you believe is possible for you, and then demand. You don't have to use force. You don't have to belittle. You don't have to talk down to people, but demand that everyone who works with you comes in with an equal or higher standard than what you're able to produce, and that's when your results will completely take off.
Dude, you're giving me goosebumps.
I appreciate it, brother. I really do, man.
Goosebumps. I mean, this is something that resonates with me so much, because that is exactly what happened to me when I was building my brand and building my business. And, in one of my mentors back in the day said, you're in the process of cycling. And what cycling is if those of you that are watching or listening don't know, it's when you create a business and it does well, and then all of a sudden it takes a big fat dump, and now you got to build it back up. That's a cycle. And he says a lot of the successful entrepreneurs out there, the Tony Robbinses, the Jeff Bezoses, the Elon Musks, they cycle like 2 or 3 times. Right. So he was like, the good news is that you're cycling and you know what it feels like. And when I cycled, for the first time, that was it. That was the switch that went off in my head. That was like, the reason why you're attracting all of these people is because your standards are low. Right? Like you gotta listen, like if you demand this level of respect and quality and value and client, then you need to be that yourself.
Yep.
And that's sort of the thing that like we forget. Like I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say this once, like a lot of you guys and your ambitions are greater than your actions. And like, it's all good to have great ambitions, but like you mentioned before, if you're not executing, it's just a big, hairy, audacious goal, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely.
Right. And so, you want to add anything to that, go for it.
Yeah. So part of, a little bit that I shared with Henry offline, guys, is I'm getting ready to relocate. And it's the first public broadcast that I've made of this. I'm getting ready to relocate in about 37 days from Middle Georgia, about an hour south of Atlanta, to the Southern California area, about 45 minutes south of LA. And so the area that I currently live in, this is where the military base, Robins Air Force Base, where I transitioned from the military. It's a rural community, very low education, very few job prospects, things of that nature. And so everything that I've done, I've had to leverage social media, travel to, build relationships and get the knowledge and information that I need to get to where I am right now. And so I reached a peak, similar to what Henry is talking about, is I have basically cycled through this entire community, looking for opportunities, adding as much value as I could possibly add, but the return wasn't getting me any further than where I knew I should be at this point in time. And so I basically had to figure out, what do I do? I've got a home here. I'm a full-time single dad. How do I build my business and not basically disrupt, my life and put my kids in a position to where, they start to suffer. And again, through mentorship, through coaching, conversations with those in my business network, that disruption is exactly what I needed. I needed to break the cycle. I needed to break the status quo. And, in talking to a business friend, I was thinking about the different cities. Of course, I was thinking, hey, move an hour north to Atlanta, go over to Charlotte, move to DC, move to Birmingham, which is where I'm originally from. There are a lot of, cities that I considered. And then I said, okay, well, if you move into any of those cities, what's going to change? Absolutely nothing. The culture is going to remain the same. The mindset is going to remain the same. Yes, you'll get into larger cities and communities. There'll be a few more opportunities. But if you really want to experience radical growth and radical change in your life and in your business, you need to make a radical decision. And that radical decision is to move 2,200 miles across the country to an area where I do know a couple of people from my time in the military. But at the end of the day, for me, I needed to make that radical change, not just to show and demonstrate it to the world, but to also show and demonstrate to myself that regardless of what your goals and your ambitions are, you have to have enough courage to actually follow through with whatever it is that you desire. And so that's the thing. I tell people that fear or decisions create fear that keeps you paralyzed. And so you cannot allow yourselves to become paralyzed by your next big step or your next leap. You have to basically, face your fears, of course, but don't just face your fears blindly. You really do some self-evaluation. You brought up Gary Vaynerchuk, who loves to talk about self-awareness. You have to really do some self-examination to figure out, okay, and I'll break it down how I do with clients. We literally do a personal SWOT analysis similar to what a business does, focusing on your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats to your success. And once we do this SWOT analysis, I then say to my clients, okay, whatever areas that we consider to be weak areas, we're not going to focus on those. We'll find someone else who's amazing and great at those particular skill sets, and we'll hire them to come in and be great at what they do. We're going to focus on what you're great at, and whatever it is that you're great at, we're going to double down. And when we double down on this, we're going to go all in on your strengths, which will then eliminate a lot of the threats that we are and all your threats are self-imposed. Whether it's limiting beliefs, I'm not cute enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't jump high enough, run fast enough, whatever it might be, that is all self-imposed limitations that have been passed on to you through similar conversations of this jackass supervisor that I had, many, many years ago. You have to be able to really double down on your strengths, which will eliminate your threats. The same thing when you outsource your weaknesses, again, eliminate your threats, and that will truly expose the opportunities that are available to you. And once you're able to see the opportunities that are available to you, again, double down on your strengths, go all in, push your chips to the center of the table, and I promise you, you will win.
That's phenomenal, dude. I love what you're dropping, dude. And I love that you're using SWOT to make people get that clarity that they're looking for. There's so many resources that are right under our noses that we don't even realize. And, the power of coaching, like you mentioned on your website, is so powerful. I have a mentor myself. He runs a multi-million-dollar branding agency. I'm a branding agency. I want to learn from him.
Right.
And I pay him a ridiculous amount to learn from him. And
right.
But the point is the outside perspective that he gives is just, to me, it's priceless. I mean, to me, it's just absolutely priceless. And I never believed in coaching when I was about 5 years into my business because I knew it all.
Right. We all think that.
Right. And then when things started to hit the fan, it was like, oh, now what do I do?
Right.
And when I took out that credit card and gave my first coach 10 G's and didn't have, a pot to piss in the bank and took a big risk. You mentioned courageous. That was a courageous move because I didn't know if that was coming back or not.
Right.
It sunk me even deeper, but it didn't. And now look at me,
Yeah.
And so courage, there's just so many, there's so many powers in coaching. And I love that you're setting out and your purpose is to help folks find those strengths and to work on those strengths, because nothing will set you back more than focusing in on what you can't do, what you don't have. I remember going into, we all get in funks, right? We all get in funks. It's just how life is.
Right.
And I remember in my early 20s, every time I would get in a funk, I would call my dad, and my dad would have a conversation with me for like an hour and a half. And he would just, all he would do is remind me of everything that was great in my life. And then he would say, you think you got it bad? Look at this. Look at what I just read in the paper. Look at what's going on over here. And you're bitching?
Yep.
And man, did that give me such a perspective. And then the other thing that he taught me, I have a 5.5-month-old son. And, one thing that I'm going to raise him to understand is every day is a new day. When I used to piss my dad off to no end, because my dad was the one who raised me. My mom wasn't in the picture. And that's sort of ironic because typically when parents go through divorce, the first thing that happens is you get shifted on, you go to moms.
Right.
So Pops took care of me. And, there were days, man, where I pissed him off royally and I did things that I wasn't supposed to do.
Right.
And I would wake up the next day thinking that was going to carry over. And it was like it never happened. And that was like such a life learning experience and a life lesson that you can carry over into business, like you mentioned. And it's just helped guide the way and get to where I am today. Just these little tiny, we call them miracle moments, in life that just paved the way. And I heard this one quote back in the day. It said, business is a team sport. And you cannot create a brand, you cannot create a business all by yourself. You just can't. It's impossible.
Nope.
And I love the fact that you are positioning yourself as the head coach. Let's call it what it is, the head coach, for entrepreneurs, business owners, just people in general that are looking for that guidance. And so, man, my hat goes off to you, because we need more people like you in this world that are as articulate as you and have that. Just, I was reading one of your testimonials and it said something along the lines of, you're just a natural motivator. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I only know you for a couple hours.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. I'll tell you. So, you brought up something in terms of just our perspective. It's very important that people understand the power of what you focus on. And so a couple of weeks ago, one of my best friends, he had a friend of his, so, third party friend scenario, that passed away, just unfortunately, unexpectedly. And of course, he was having a challenge, with the passing and transition of his friend. And so normally I try my best not to utilize, coaching strategies and techniques on, family and friends, because I just try to be a friend and try to be a family member. However, in this particular scenario, because of what he was dealing with, his perspective on where things were, in his own personal life and even his career, it was coming across, to me as negative energy. And what we give energy to, what we focus on, that's where the energy flows to that. And that's what you're going to attract back. And so, as he was just telling me, all of his challenges and what he was dealing with, et cetera, I basically just had to pause for him. And I asked for permission. I really asked him for permission. Is it okay that, I ask you a couple of questions to, kind of help you go through what you're going through right now? And of course, we have mutual respect. He said yes. And so as he, went through his list of all the things that were just troubling him at that moment, I just basically stopped and I said, well, what are you grateful for? And it really forced him to pause and stop and think for a minute. And of course, he had a few items on the list that he was grateful for. And he goes, well, why did you ask me that? I said, because I needed to shift your focus. I needed to get your mind off of all of the things that you felt were currently going bad, so we can get you to focus on the things that are going good and keep your attention there. Because that's how most people don't, and I'm telling you from personal experience, we create depression. Once we start to focus on all the negatives of what's currently going wrong, what can possibly go wrong, the more attention we give to those things, we just create that chemical imbalance within ourselves, and it drives us deeper into a really dark place. And so I highly encourage anybody out there who's listening or even watching this on YouTube right now, shift your focus. Change what you're focused on, change what you're thinking, and I promise you, your entire situation will change.
Well, what did I say? You can't be grateful, angry at the same time.
Yeah.
You can't be grateful or upset or sad at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that, it's funny. Like, I always had this retention problem. I never read books until I was about 35 years old.
Gotcha.
Right. And it's funny. I would read a book and then I would forget everything that I read. And I always had a comprehension issue. I remember getting my report cards and there would always be a little thing that says reading comprehension, struggles, blah, blah, blah. And I think I just was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm not reading books anymore.
Right.
But man, when I realized the power of reading and the power of knowledge and as I got older and got deeper into business, I realized knowledge is key. I mean, knowledge is power. Knowledge is what's going to separate you from everybody else and differentiate you and create your expertise, right? And it's so funny, the little things, I want to get to my point, but the little things that you remember, you can't be grateful and angry at the same time. 99.9% of us would probably just read over that and be like, oh, yeah. But that one stuck with me. For whatever reason, and I go through the same thing. I use the 5-minute journal. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's I use the app version, which is super cool. I used to buy the books and they just became cumbersome, but
right.
The 5-minute journal is key because in the morning it asks you 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things that's going to make today awesome, and then they want you to write an affirmation. I am ... and you got to do that every morning, and I do it religiously. And at the end, what 3 things happened today that made it awesome, and you got to write it down. And one of them is going to be meeting Jay Jackson and having him on my podcast. I have to tell you, man, and no disrespect for any of my past podcast co-hosts, but this one here is ringing. It's ringing, and I want to say it's one of my favorites so far because there's just so much power in what it is that you're saying. And as I was saying to you offline, if you think you're going to have a great brand at the end of the day, without getting your mind right first and getting true to you first and getting all the skeletons out of the closet and becoming truly who it is that you want to be in this life, you'll never have the brand of your dreams. You'll never have a successful business. Because there will always be that friction. And when there's friction, things wear out. And when they wear out, they go kaput. And I've seen plenty of businesses do that because they're in it for the wrong reasons. They're not staying true to themselves. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And whatever that supposed to is, and that's where they fall in trouble. And so everything that you're putting out from your backstory to, I just want to recap because I have a 4:00 and I have to prep for it a little bit, but I can talk to you for another hour and a half.
I love it, man. I appreciate it.
But what you were saying before about these little triggers, if I can wrap this episode up in one tight knot, and focus on one thing, it was your stepdad and it was that supervisor that said to you, you'll be back, or you're not going to be anything in your life. Those two things just triggered you. And now look at you. Like, that is something to be proud of, my friend.
I appreciate it, man. And I know you got to go, but I want to just bring up one quick thing. So mindset, everybody, that is truly the key to any level of success. And I get it. Success is relative. You might be trying to, whether it's an undergrad, start your first business, write that book, start your speaking career, whatever your business might be, product or service-based business, it is your mindset. Henry brought up, books. The one thing that we have to understand, everybody, is that your mental program, your conditioning in your worldview about life is what has you where you are right now. Everything that you have, the kind of car that you drive, the way that you dress, the house that you live in, whomever you're currently dating, all of that is based on your conditioning. It's based on the habits, things that have been passed down to you from your family through generations. Okay, it's been embedded in your DNA upon conception. You can change that. All right, you can recondition and reprogram your mind. Read books. And it's not just a matter of how many books you can read or how many books you can even get through. It's how many books get through to you. Right? Listen to podcasts. Watch YouTube videos when you're driving in your car, when you're getting ready to take a shower, while you're cooking dinner. Condition your mind to achieve whatever it is. I promise you'll change the way you think, you'll change the way you speak, you'll change the way that you behave, and that is your brand. What people think about you when you're not in the room, that is your brand. It's not your logo, it's not the color of your website, it's not how thick the paper is on your business card, although those things do, contribute and assist, but it is who you are as a person. How do you show up in the world is your brand. When people hear your name, what is the very first thought that comes to their mind? And you can restructure your brand, you can restructure and recondition your mindset, and you can really put yourself in a position to separate you from the masses. It's okay to take the road less traveled, break the status quo, don't do what the masses are doing, unplug from the matrix. You can have whatever type of business in life that you want. Recondition your mind, raise your standards and expectations.
That's beautiful, my friend. I love the way you wrap that up in a nice little package. And you talked about mindset, and I just want to end with this. I had a coaching call with my mentor today, and he said, there's going to be people out there that are going to try to chop you down. And he was like, there's a guy out there by the name of Kanye West who does this really, really well, where there is nothing that can penetrate this dude from a negative standpoint. I mean, this dude just like repels negativity like you have no idea, because and this is what my mentor was saying. He's like, when we have a headache, what's the first thing we do? We rub our temples, right? And they're called temples for a reason. When we walk into a religious establishment, right? We don't bring the mess, right? We respect that temple. We respect that church. We respect the mosque. We respect that all of those religious, right, statues. Yeah. The reason why they call this your temple is because this is a place of respect, a place that must be protected, right, by all the negativity that's out there, and you have to become the gatekeeper of that temple.
Absolutely.
And so when people are going to try to steer you in the wrong direction, to have you do stupid things that keep you off track of your goal or your mission, or people are going to say things to you or slander you or you need to be that person that says, that's not coming in today, guys. We're not having that. And he said, it's like somebody walking up to you, Henry, and saying, Henry, you're a kangaroo. And you would look at him and be like, No, dude, I'm a human being. Like, I'm a king. No, you're a turkey. Like, you would look at them and be like, dude, what are you smoking? Right? But then if somebody says to you that you're, you're never going to amount to something. But we listen to that.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm being facetious here.
I'm with you.
Yeah. And so that is what I want the audience to pay attention to today, because that mindset is everything.
Absolutely.
That's going to drive your brand. That's going to drive your life. That's going to drive everything between today and the day you leave this earth. So what are you going to do with it? It's it. So, dude, my man, thank you so much. We went 50 minutes, dude.
It's no worries, man. I appreciate it. I definitely didn't expect to stay this long, but it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate the talk.
Oh, absolutely. And for everybody that is watching and listening, I did showcase the website before, but if you guys missed it, it's Mr. MRJAY Jackson, JACKSON.com. Go check out MrJJackson.com. He's got a shop where you can download and purchase a whole bunch of his trainings. You could book him for speaking engagements. He's got a wealth of knowledge there. He's got a great looking blog I saw before. Go check him out. Jay, it was a pleasure having you on the show. This is not the first time we're hanging, bro. I can tell you right now.
Hey, man, I look forward to it. I am super grateful for you having me on board. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to share with your audience. I look forward to future conversations. And like I said, man, if we can make New York happen, let's make it happen.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. So real quick, before we wrap up, just some housekeeping stuff. If you haven't joined the Brand Doctors Hangout on Facebook yet, go over there and check that out. We'll be over there. There's about 400 of us now in this group. It's a tight little community, but it's just a bunch of entrepreneurs just helping each other, just build brand and build each other's business together. And if you haven't subscribed to this podcast yet, please do so. And if you haven't shared it with a friend or a colleague, I truly appreciate that in advance. And thank you so much for your attention today. And I'm going to catch you guys on the next episode. So talk to you soon.